Hello, hi, back again with another video. Will Thunder Talks here today to share stuff in my brain box with you, wonderful people. Great to see you today. I got a question that I've certainly thought about a lot, and you might have too. So how do you open up to people? This is a question I think about a lot. I'm going to talk about it right now. So how do you open up to people? Really hard. I'm going to start with a little bit of how I think you do that mechanically, and then I'm going to share a bit about what that's been like for me. So mechanically, you need to understand what your red flags are. So we all have red flags for how people look at us, how people speak, how people interact with stuff we shared historically, right? So if you struggle to open up with two people, it might be that you've shared stuff and it's not really been received in the way you hoped. Or it could even be that they didn't react to it in a really strong positive way versus a neutral negative way, right? We fill in the gaps kind of with those neutrals and assume it's negative often because our brain wants to protect us from harm, and if we assume the worst, we can reduce harm. That's kind of how we're biologically built, in my opinion. We kind of all do that. Based on how much risk tolerance we have innately. So how does that look for me? And maybe more specifically, things you can kind of do. For me, that's looks like kind of being aware of my own expectations. So for me, I love music. I like making noises. I like making sounds. I like pressing the synth noises. I like noises. So I'm really, really into that. I'm very excited about that. If there are noises and I can play an instrument, or I can play an instrument, or I can play an instrument, or whatever, I'm down. I'm here. And not everyone is as jazzed about that as I am. Not as everyone wants to get as obsessively interested in just the mechanics of this, just music, and really kind of feel as much about music as I do. Everyone has different relationships with music. Music is OP for mental health for a lot of different reasons. But we all have our own unique relationship with the thing we're interested in that we want to share. Okay? So, so I have a very specific way I relate to music. My wife has a different way of relating to music. So I'm like, oh man, the melodies are really cool. Is this in the Aeolian mode? I really love that kind of weird chord that they threw into the progression. I love that weird measure that kind of chops stuff up a little bit. I like a bit of music theory. I like to kind of learn about that because I write music myself. But my wife's not like that. She has a very different relationship with music. She likes music that is you can kind of feel in your body, right? Really bassy, strong music that has a powerful beat. And she really likes that kind of music. She gets kind of bored if there isn't a strong beat, right? We all relate to things differently. And if you're anything like me, that can sometimes feel like a rejection, right? So historically, that's really felt like a lot to me, like a big rejection for just having a different relationship with a certain topic or a certain aspect of a topic, whoever your favorite superhero is, or whoever, I don't know, maybe you really like a certain type of actor. Maybe you really like Tom Hiddleston, right? And you're really into Loki, and you think he's really cool. You might like different aspects of him compared to someone else, right? And when you share that part of you is vulnerable, right? That has all this excitement, there's a lot of emotion behind it. You dump that down, you're like, oh my god, I love this thing about Tom Hiddleston or Loki or whatever, or Tom Holland or whoever your preferred Tom is. And we take that as a rejection when our energy's met, right? When our vibes are not met. So be aware of the instances you've had of that, where what are your rejection points? Is it something I want to put down here, right? What are your rejection points? And then let's look at and understand what do we assume is the comfortable territory in this relationship we're in? Okay, so you could say with a co-worker, right? You might assume the comfortable territory is to talk about what happened at work, right? That's like an obvious one. Say you're an office worker and you work on spreadsheets all day, you go in and you want to talk to your co-workers about the spreadsheets. Makes sense, right? Or the reports that you have to fill in, or an account you work with, or some code you're programming, or whatever your job is, right? Or how a client is if you're a therapist, or work in care, or whatever. Lots of different jobs. So that's like the normal territory, right? That's like the comfortable territory that you interact with. Now, like, what, you're going to zoom out from that and think like, so what do we want outside of that? What are we seeking? It's very important to clarify at this point when you're like thinking about like how to open up to people, okay? So like, what do I want from opening up to this like coworker, for the sake of example? Like I had a coworker who had a different opinion to me about like LGBTQ+, and like whether or not that was a good thing. I've always been incredibly pro LGBTQ+. A lot of people in my life are kind of in that community. I think it's pretty cool. I'm here for it. I've always been pro trans rights are human rights, and all that stuff. But they had a different opinion. They didn't really feel like that. And a lot of people could take that as like a rejection, right? Because that could be a really divisive point for a lot of people, right? And then right there, bam, we've got something in the relationship. And then a lot of assumptions are made. You don't think the same that I do about this. You must be this, you must be that, you must be like, maybe you're not a good person, maybe a bigot, maybe words are like coming up. But we have to be like careful of our own biases there, right? Because then bam, we no chance of building a relationship with this person. The blockades are up, and we have to like, then the relationship becomes suffocating, right? We have less and less space to interact with people in. And, some people don't want to hear you out. Some people don't want to like put the effort in, which is unfortunate, right? Even if there's people we really care about and love the idea of being with them, that they're not going to want to bridge that relational gap. And that's something we might have to grieve and process the idea of change. But connecting with people involves a constant reevaluation of the relationship. And I want to elaborate on that a bit more. What I mean by that is you need to be open to having people change. So a lot of us in our lives, I've seen this a lot in a lot of the work I do clinically, personally, and in myself, is that we all kind of put people, like we all have this like main character syndrome in a way. We're all like in our own heads thinking about like our own lives, right? More than anything else. That's kind of my belief. I think a lot of people are too in their own heads to like care too much about what other people are doing the vast majority of the time. And we kind of forget that everyone around us is also changing and growing. Okay? And I think this is often what leads to us being like left behind, right? But our relationships change dramatically over time with people, right? I especially think about this when we go through different stages of life, right? So for me, I'm 31 years old. I've been through a few stages of life at this point. I've still got quite a few more to go. But something I've really noticed is like we all kind of move through those stages of life at like different paces, at different speeds sometimes. And not assessing where we are at with people we've known forever. Like for some people, like it's cool to just like do the same thing you do with them the whole time, right? But as we like grow and become, I guess, different, and our needs change and we become simpler in some ways and more complicated in other ways, it can be really easy to like lose touch with those like long-standing friendships, right? So I say all of this because how are you going to keep those connections? You've got to reassess where you're at, right? I'm thinking of some of my buddies. I'm married. I've been married for several years now, which is fantastic. I'm very happy about that. But some of my other friends aren't at that stage in life yet. And I think it's important to acknowledge, because I'm in a committed long-term romantic relationship, that changes kind of the paradigm of how I live my life. That means I might have different focuses, I might have different needs. The relationships are gonna alter based on how the parties change. So if you want to bridge that gap, and that's something to assess, right? That if you want to stay in that relationship, you need to really go, so like, what do I want right now? What do I need out of the relationships around me? What compromises can I make? Because I think every relationship's a negotiation, right? What can I give them? What can they give me? And it sounds very transactional, but also we need to be very aware of kind of the balance of what we give in relationships, because if we aren't aware of that, we're just going to end up giving and giving, giving, or taking and taking and taking. The balance will be off, and then we will have kind of resentment build in all kinds of relationships. So for me, I feel like there are some relationships that I've had to reassess recently, with my brother in particular. And I guess I felt like I'm in a very different stage of life. We have different kind of priorities, and we had an argument, and for now I'm not talking to him. So sometimes you have to draw those boundaries and create space for yourself to then like figure out, hey, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And not just give, because I have historically been guilty of that, of like giving a lot in relationships, and not kind of getting a lot back. So that balance is important, and unfortunately people are going to see you as like a giver sometimes when you do that. People certainly have for me, and I try and take a bit, and they don't like that. And like the hard part to grieve there is like the relationships will change, and maybe you'll have less people in your life, but you'll be taking less from others, right? I think that balance is really important. So I'm going to leave it there. You've been wonderful. I've been Will. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here. If you've been here for the whole video, you're pretty cool, whoever you are. Big W. I'm gonna shoot, but it's been a pleasure. Good luck with like figuring out how to connect with people. It's tough. It's complicated. Every relationship's unique, which is why it requires continual effort to be in alignment with other people, and to make the implicit explicit. So good luck with that. It's hard to do. It's brave to do. It's brave to say you want this in a relationship and it's not being met right now. If you do that, good stuff. But I'm going to run. Take care. Good luck. And I appreciate you.